kind of almost criminal that they don't teach this stuff at school, that they don't actually give kids the principles of budgeting and cash flow management early. It's a life skill that if you get cash flow management right and combine that with incremental investing, you are unstoppable.
We've got some fresh new young talent doing some things that I know you haven't heard before.
1, 2, 3, listen.
Welcome to the Young Minds podcast, hosted by Bridee.
I'm Daniel.
And we work for Bridee Financial Partners. This podcast helps young adults build confidence and clarity when it comes to money, empowered by youth, inspired by experience. We know that navigating the world of finance in your late teens to 20s can often feel overwhelming, whether it's understanding your first pay slip, learning how to invest, managing student debt, or just trying to save without missing out on life. Believe it or not, it is actually possible.
That's why this podcast is here, to make finance more accessible, more understandable, and way more relevant to your life right now. Each episode will break down key financial concepts, give you practical tips you can actually use, and have real conversations about money. From budgeting and credit scores to purchasing your first home, we will cover it all.
As university students coming to the end of our degrees, we created this podcast not because we have all the answers, but because we're asking the same questions you are. Each episode, we will be accompanied by a qualified financial advisor from the Bridee Financial Practice to provide insight and guidance in the topics to come. No confusing words, no lectures, just honest insight to help you make smarter money moves now and in the future.
So whether you're studying, working, or figuring things out, you're in the right place. Accompanying us today is Jay Burke, practice owner and qualified financial advisor. Welcome, Jay.
Thank you, Daniel. Thank you, Bridee. It's nice to be on the other side of the camera and the microphone for once.
So tell us about yourself. How did you become a financial advisor?
Well, before I answer that question, just congratulations to the two of you, by the way, on starting your own podcast. I think it's a hats off to you both. I think I know a lot about financial planning. I think I know a lot about young people and investing and what they think about from a financial point of view, but it's clear that I don't. And understanding or hearing some of your feedback around what people of your age want to listen to, I realise that I probably should be handing over the reins to the podcast to you. So again, congratulations, great job, and I look forward to many more of these podcast episodes in the future. What was the question again, Daniel?
So tell us about yourself. How did you become a financial advisor?
Okay, so how long have we got? We've got just a couple of minutes. So my story is, I think it's unique, but it's probably not that unique for financial advisors 20, 25 years ago. So unlike today where you guys are doing your degree qualified with a view to becoming a financial advisor, you used to be able to get your license to provide financial advice on the back of a Wheaties box. So it really wasn't that difficult. I actually didn't think I was going to be a financial advisor to begin with. So I left school thinking I wanted to be a physiotherapist, didn't get the marks, decided to get into health science, became a registered nurse, and was a registered nurse for about 2 or 3 years before family circumstances led us down the path of me joining the family business. So that family circumstances was my older brother unfortunately passed away. He had a young son, Cody, who both of you would know now. You see him rock into the office from time to time. And family circumstances dictated that I moved home and I helped the family out with Cody, who my parents, Peter and Lynn, inherited as a 6-day-old little baby. And it was at the same time that Peter and Lynn were actually starting what was then called PB Financial Solutions. So sort of sliding doors moment, I went from health science, nursing, into helping out with the family business. And within 12 months of helping out, with some bookkeeping and accounts and basically getting the business set up, this is in sort of July of 2001, I made the decision that I think financial planning was for me. So that was my foray into financial planning. It was sort of by happenstance, not necessarily by design.
Oh, nice. What do you love about being a financial advisor? What drives you to come to work every day?
Well, you guys would know me pretty well. You've known me for 6 months, Daniel and Bridee. How long have you known me for?
Probably close to 10 months now.
10 months, yeah. And so one of the things I think you'll know from me is that I actually like talking. Like I actually like people. I like conversations and I like problem solving. And I think I always think about the parallels between what the career I was in nursing, which is very much sort of client and patient centric, to what we do today in financial planning. And I get to spend a lot of time with a lot of different people. I get to help them out with their sort of their lifestyle and financial goals. And yeah, I thoroughly enjoy it. I like the complexity. I like that every day is different. I like that every client situation is different. And so, yeah, I like helping people. I like problem solving. And that's what gets me up every day.
Very nice, very nice. So let's just take it back a little bit. Can you explain to us in your words what actually is financial advising? Okay.
Well, you'd think that after sort of 25 years in financial advising that I'd have a good definition for it. I think I've said many times on this podcast and to clients that financial planning, it might be a shock to people, but financial planning is not really financial planning. Like financial planning is actually lifestyle planning. Like if you think about all the milestone events that you have in your life, whether it be saving for your first home, whether it be having your first child, whether it be getting married, whether it be traveling overseas, most of those, like it starts with them being a life event. It doesn't necessarily start with it. You're thinking about it from a financial point of view, but there is a financial outcome or a financial necessity to actually deal with a lot of those life events. So I always like to say that financial planning is not really financial planning, it's life planning. And I think if you can make really good informed decisions with your money, it makes those life events much easier to handle. So I'm sure other people will come up with a better definition of financial planning or financial advice than that. But I think as myself, as a financial advisor, I kind of see myself as the coach, the counsel, the mentor for people to be able to guide them through all of those life events. And where they're not so well versed on how to make it happen financially, to actually help them and guide them and let them actually come along for the ride.
So thanks for that, Jay. So today's podcast and episode is about budgeting and cash flow. So not many people would know what budgeting is, and if they do, they don't know how to do it effectively. So in basic terms, how would you describe what budgeting is?
Well, budgeting gets a bad rap, I'll say, start there. That budgeting actually gets, when I first kind of heard that idea of budgeting, it conjures up ideas of like really scrimping and saving, like having no freedom. Like that you're limited, all the fun in your life is gone, and you're simply, putting all your money aside for some future need. For me, budgeting is not about scrimping and saving. It's about having awareness about what comes in, so what you earn, and what goes out. So if you think about all of those life decisions that most of us are starting to think about, whether you're 13, 15, 18, 25, 47, 50, they have an element of, there's a financial element of them. And the sooner you can actually have a handle on your cash flow, the easier it is to make like really informed decisions about what you do. So budgeting for me is just awareness of what comes in, what goes out. And the earlier on in your life that you can get a handle on your cash flow and your budgeting, and it doesn't feel like an onerous thing to do, that it becomes almost habit, almost like hygiene, like brushing your teeth, that the better off you'll be. Unfortunately, for a lot of people, the conversation around budgeting is not had when you're 15 or 16. People are trying to understand what budgeting and cash flow management looks like at 45, at 55. And that's scary. If you get budgeting under control and cash flow under control when you're 18, 19, you're unstoppable.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So working off that with different time frames, you've got 40-year-olds, you've got 18-year-olds looking at budgeting differently. Would you say that the way you approach budgeting is based on your goals? Like you start with your goal, you work backwards to figure out your way of budgeting and how that works.
Yeah, it's a great question because we get asked that a lot. Like how do you budget? Like what's the starting point of budgeting? And And sometimes people come to us with like parts of their budgeting right. Like they'll have an element of their budgeting right. It might be how they set up their bank accounts. It might be that someone's told them how much they should be putting into a savings account. But again, the example that I spoke about before is that most of us have an idea of what the lifestyle objectives we're after. And it might be buying a car. It might be paying for, university fees. It might be the first home. Whatever it is, if you work backwards from that, you say, well, what is it that I'm actually trying to achieve? Like, what's the why? Most of the time you can attribute a dollar value to it. So if I'm saving for a car, well, how much is that car? When do I want that car by? So we've got the amount, we've got the time frame. If we work back from that, we can quite easily work out how much we should be directing to that goal. That concept applied across all of the things in your life then starts to build the basis of a solid budget. Unfortunately, what most people do is that they think that a lot of things in budgeting are sort of out of their control. Like I can't control what my boss pays me. I can't control the cost of living. As soon as you give up control to sort of external forces around your budgeting, to me, budgeting is one of the only things that you have complete control over, that you have it's totally in your control. And if you get it under control early, as I said earlier, you're unstoppable. If you get a handle on your cash flow and your budgeting early, and you're disciplined with being able to, look at the time frame, look at the dollar amount that you're trying to save, you're going to be far ahead. You'd be miles ahead of anyone else who is actually not budgeting, not cash flow managing effectively.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks, Jay. I guess my next question would be like, at what point do you find it appropriate and when should you budget? I guess a lot of people wouldn't know, when do I start? Like, I know, for example, when I was 18, that wasn't even a thought in my head to budget. I'm young, a lot of time to work, just want to have fun, I want to go out, that sort of stuff. So at what point do you think it's appropriate to think or to even begin budgeting?
Well, yesterday, the best time is yesterday to have already started. I don't think you can start too early. I mean, the principles of budgeting, of cash flow management, I try to instill them in my kids as early as possible. You guys know that I have 5 kids ranging from, 19 through to 6, and all of them to varying degrees. I'm trying to teach them about time frame, about money, about being able to put it. Most of us, when we think budgeting, think saving. Like that's about as far as the concept of budgeting goes. Like, I should save. I should put some money over here into a bank account to save. The problem with that, and it's a good starting point, is one of the elements of budgeting, but what's wrong with that is that it doesn't go back to Bridee's original point of actually having like a defined purpose. Like, what is the purpose? What am I saving actually for? So it's a good start. But when you start to be more specific about that budgeting and identify the things that you actually want, budgeting becomes more fun. Like, it becomes more fun if you know what you're saving for, if you know why you're wanting to be disciplined enough to put money aside. And I think maybe this is a good point to actually maybe talk about the importance of that sort of that self-discipline. It is, again, budgeting gets a bum rap. Like it feels like a dirty word sometimes. But I think that idea of actually having discipline and having the self-discipline to actually budget, if you combine 2 things, and I know this is about budgeting, it's not about investing, but there's 2 things that I believe that if you can nail early in your working life, you'll be unstoppable, and that is budgeting and cash flow management. So having awareness about your expenditure and your income. And the second one is investing small amounts regularly over a long period of time. Combine those 2 things together, and you have a very powerful combination of having control of money, but also investing regularly and benefiting from the compounding effect of investing over a long period of time. But yeah, when should we start budgeting? straight away, like as soon as you can. And again, budgeting doesn't have to be. I think we're probably going to talk about some tools for budgeting. So maybe I won't dive into that too much. But budgeting doesn't need to be overly complicated. I think we have a sense that you want to outsource responsibility for a lot of these things, for convenience to things like apps. Budgeting doesn't need to be super complicated to begin with. It can be very, very simple.
Thank you for that. The next one, sort of bouncing off that as well, is that most people think that when you're budgeting, you also can't have a life. You can't go out and spend money. You can't enjoy things. How do you measure budgeting against a lifestyle?
Yeah, and I think this is where like comparison can be a real issue. Like we have a sense that we always want to compare ourselves against others, and I've always thought that the only thing we really should be worried about is what we want personally. So when it comes to sort of comparing yourself versus others and the lifestyle that you want to achieve, it's entirely up to yourself. What I know for sure is that the longer you leave budgeting and cash flow management, the harder it is to actually have the lifestyle that you actually want to live. So I think I said to you, Daniel, I've said it a couple of times in meetings that we've had, but it's very easy to grow into an income, meaning as your income grows, it's very easy for your lifestyle to increase progressively as well. So as your income goes up, you can buy a little bit better car, you can shop and buy slightly better clothes. Your income, your expenses will increase with your income. But it's very hard. So it's easy to grow into an income, but it's very hard to grow out of expenses. So that means that once you've developed a lifestyle that requires that level of income, it's very hard to go back the other way. So back to your original point, Bridee, I think most people think that budgeting means that they can't enjoy themselves. I think it's the complete opposite. But what I think you have to be conscious of is setting a realistic ceiling of how much of your total income that you're prepared to spend on sort of lifestyle discretionary items. Where it gets out of control is where people have no guidelines. They have no guidelines about how much they're prepared to spend on personal expenses, and so then we run into the trap of people kind of just spending everything that comes in. That the idea of people just living paycheck to paycheck, which was not a great idea.
Perfect. Thanks, Jay. Back to our conversation before around apps and methods of budgeting. Some people, I know over time, I've found it sometimes difficult. You don't know how to track your expenses properly, or you just don't do it because you don't want to, you sort of want to live. So in terms of apps or tips, tricks, or some tools to be able to help with that, what are some of those options that people can use?
Yeah. And now I'm old school, as you guys know. I'm old school. So I think the starting point for most people is like pen and paper. Like realistically, it is just if you do not have any idea of what your income is, what your expenses are, write them down. Like 2 columns, income and expenses. Total them up. And the difference between the two will tell you whether you spend more than you earn or earn more than you spend. But as you start to get a little bit more complicated in your sort of financial situation, maybe you've got income from a few different sources, maybe you've got to use some tools. We've got a couple of pretty basic tools that we use for our clients. So we have some budget spreadsheets, which anyone that's listening to this wants a copy of that, hit us up, and Daniel and Bridee will send it to you. Most banks now, so the Commonwealth Bank, NAB, Westpac, all the big four, even the likes of Bendigo Bank, if you're with one of those banks, nearly all of them now have a cash flow management tool, like a budgeting tool. Not everyone uses them, but to me that is an exceptionally easy place for you to get awareness about exactly where your expenses are going and what your income is. So I think starting simple and pen and paper to begin with. Number 2, there's a plethora of sort of budget spreadsheets available. If you go onto the money I think it's called MoneyWise website. We can link it into the show notes, but there's a bunch of tools and calculators for budgeting. You can ask us for a budget spreadsheet, and then you can look at some of the apps with each of the with each of the big banks. However you do it, as I said before, you want to be sure that you're not sort of outsourcing the responsibility for awareness to someone else. I think anything that comes under the guise of convenience, I'm a little concerned about. I always think the best thing you can do is take absolute personal control and ownership of exactly where your money goes. And to me, that means, you're recording your expenses and your income yourself.
We've also heard a bit about people talking about a 50-30-20 rule. Is that something you're familiar with?
Yeah, I've heard it. And so I think it says something like 50% goes to your, your needs, 50% to your wants, or 30% to your wants and 20% to savings, something thereabouts. So I think this is, you mentioned before, like comparison. People are always after like this simple rule of thumb that says like, how much should we put into savings? How much should we invest? How much should we spend on, fixed expenses? To me, I think that maybe is a good starting point. So if someone has zero idea on how much they should be allocating to categories, whether it be saving, whether it be discretionary spending, that's an okay rule of thumb. But again, because everyone is very different, like if your goals, Bridee, are very different to Daniel's, your split of 50 or your of discretionary, non-discretionary and savings will be very different. So I think if you've done nothing, that's a very good starting point to say, okay, I should be putting 20% of my income over into savings. But I think the reality, a lot of people will look at that and go, I don't even have 20%. So sometimes it becomes like it's a bit of an afterthought, people looking for that quick fix of a principle that they can apply to their own circumstances. I'd be encouraging people again to get a little bit more granular than that, and to again start to look at exactly where their own expenses go. Once you actually do a budget, once you've done your own budget, you'll actually start to see yourself what that split of expenses is. So it's a good starting point, but I don't think as a rule of thumb it should be applied across the board.
In regards to cash flow and income, as an example, and people, as you were saying, it's easy to grow into your income, but it's very hard to grow out of your income in terms of expenses. Would you say that income is irrelevant if your cash flow is poor?
Can you say that again? Is your income irrelevant if your cash flow is poor?
As in, you might make a lot of money, say X amount of money, and it's a lot, and you think you're doing really well. However, if your cash flow is poor, would you say that your income then sort of becomes irrelevant because you're spending so much and you don't really have much in surplus?
Yeah, well, I think it doesn't matter whether you earn $10,000 a year or whether you earn $1 million a year. If your cash flow is poor, like if your management of your income and your expenses is poor, you're going to be in trouble either way. Now, if you earn a little bit more money and you've got the willingness to actually make a change, so you've got the willingness to maybe adjust some of your expenditure, you're probably in a better position to free up some surplus, so you're in a better position to do something. But the same applies if you do not have a good handle on your cash flow, and this is why I'd say that the earlier on in your life that you can actually get your cash flow under control and have the discipline and have it as a habit, then as your income grows, you will see a much greater surplus appear because you'll have much more control over your expenses. So it's back to your original point, like when to budget as early as you possibly can. So before your income starts to grow, I think maybe to your point, Bridee, about the principle, that sort of 50-30-20 principle, I like the idea of, it gets thrown around a little bit, but actually paying yourself first. And that concept of paying yourself first seems a little bit, people can misinterpret it. But to me it means is that we are all inclined to pay, you might pay, if you have your phone, you'll have your car repayments. We know that we're going to pay those things no matter what. And we prioritize those first. But it seems to me that people will generally prioritize themselves and investing and saving last. They'll wait until they see whether they've got any money left after all of those expenses, and then they'll decide whether they invest. Now, as I said, the older you get, the harder it becomes to actually change anything. It becomes much, much harder to actually build in regular automatic savings for yourself. If you start early and you start to pay yourself, and by paying yourself, I mean things like putting money aside for a home, investing for the long term, and then you commit that you will not change them. They become almost non-discretionary, meaning that I'm not choosing to do this. I have to do this. Like I have to put money aside for savings. I have to put money aside for investments. Then, again, back to that point of as early on as you possibly can, if you have the discipline to save, the discipline to budget, the discipline to invest, you will be unstoppable. And having seen this across generations, like having been a financial advisor now for 25 years, I've seen kids and grandkids of my clients that have had good disciplined cash flow, have invested regularly, and now, in their 30s with investment properties, savings, kids of their own. It's exciting. It's exciting to see. You've got a question there, Bridee. I can see you pondering.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out how to word the question I've got.
Give it a go.
So in the respect of, for those who are feeling like they're currently in that slump of living paycheck to paycheck, their expenses are meeting the same level of their income, what would you recommend they do to begin to drop those expenses and to have better cash flow so they can start that investing? And yes, it's budgeting, but where do you start?
Yeah, well, this is back to my point of it being your responsibility. So what unfortunately, and this might be a little bit provocative, but what a lot of people will say, that a lot of the reasons for them having poor cash flow are out of their control. Like my rent is too high, my mortgage is too much, my insurances are too much, I don't get paid enough. As soon as you give up control to external forces in how your cash flow is, you've lost the game. And this might be, again, a little bit controversial, but everything's a choice. Like every single thing is a choice, but it starts with awareness to begin with. Like if someone says, listen, I'm living paycheck to paycheck and I don't like it and I want to do something about it. But many people will do nothing about it. Like they'll say, I live paycheck to paycheck. They'll complain about it. They'll do nothing about it. They could, but they choose not to. So the starting point is to acknowledge, I want something different here. And the something different might be identifying what their goals are, right? So this it's fairly simple and it's fairly rudimentary, but if people are starting to say, I'm living paycheck to paycheck, but I want to own my own home. Like I want to start a family. I want to move to a different place. I want to travel overseas. All those sort of lifestyle events that we talked about, there has to be a point where you look at your priorities and there's a compromise. So maybe you can't afford to be living. The reality might be maybe you can't afford to be renting a 3-bedroom house on your own. You have to make some sort of change in those expenses. But I think most people are looking for that quick fix when the reality is that it's sometimes they're hard decisions. Hopefully those decisions, Bridee, happen earlier on in life. And I think this is the point. Like if you're struggling with paycheck to paycheck and you're 19 and you're only earning 20 grand a year, like don't stress, like calm down. It's okay. Like your income's likely to continue to increase. And if you can get a handle on your cash flow and budgeting early, you'll be fine. If we're having this conversation, Bridee, and you're 45 and you've got 3 kids and you've got a mortgage and you haven't got much wiggle room, that becomes much harder. So those compromises in your expenses become really quite challenging the older you get. And so this is back to the theme of this conversation and budgeting, is that you've got to get a handle on this early. If you get a handle on this early, it's not a problem. Like it's not a problem. You probably don't have very many difficult conversations around how you decrease expenses or increase income. This becomes a much, much easier, an easier thing to manage the earlier you get a handle on it. Did that answer that question, Bridee?
It did. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, that was good. Thank you. At what point does it become from your individual budgeting to, you need advice? You've got enough saved up. You've got enough hold on your cash flow. At what point does it then become that you can get advice to then build your wealth?
Yeah, again, it depends, right? And that tends to be the answer to most things. Is it depends. I think if people really struggle with actually quantifying what their objectives are. Like when you say to people, "What do you want?" Like you've heard me say this in meetings. Like, can you tell me what are your sort of financial and lifestyle objectives? I think sometimes people are really clear, like they're really direct and they actually know what they want, and that's cool. That's my wife. Like she knows exactly what she wants, and that take her 5 seconds to go, yeah, I want to do this. I want to travel here. I want to live here. I want this many kids. I want this much money. Cool. Help me get there. Some people need help fleshing it out. So some people need help fleshing out what they're actually trying to achieve. So to me, the starting point is like, when should you budget? Yesterday. When should you get advice? Well, if you're thinking you need advice, that's the time to come and get it. Like, I don't think it's a dollar amount that you have to save. Like the first conversation, a 15-minute conversation with an advisor, sitting down and having like an initial appointment with an advisor, that can happen at any time. I think that it's about getting you on the right track. Sometimes people need that earlier on in their life, like their financial and working life. Some people need it a little bit later. So I know that's a bit of an ambiguous answer, but it kind of depends. Like if you're thinking, shit, I should get some advice, then get some. If you're pretty dialed in and you're already putting some money aside, you'll hit a point where the decision making is a bit too big for you. And if you're not sure what house to buy, what shares to own, you probably should come and see us. Do you have a sense, Bridee, that there is a point where people should be coming? Like for you, for example, like when would you seek advice?
I mean, I seek my advice around the office while I'm just working day to day. But I know it's probably something that I'll think about a couple of years out of uni. Is like not necessarily formal advice, but a little bit of this is my situation. This is where I want to be in the next 5-ish years. Like what should I be doing? Like buying a house, for example. Like I don't know a lot about buying a house and the different rules and stuff to it, which we will explore later in the podcast. But I'm 20 years old. I'm not buying a house tomorrow, but in the next couple of years, I'm looking at buying a house. So is that where advice can come in, or is that not quite there yet still?
To me, the fact that you've actually got a thought, like you've got a time frame, like you go in the next couple of years, or is it 2 or 5 years, we can start that process of working out, well, where do you want to live? And I'll ask you the question now, like where you think about buying a home, whereabouts do you think you'd like to live?
For me, as like a young 20-year-old, probably Armstrong Creekish area. Okay. So I find that's like, your young family sort of area. It's a safe area. You don't hear too much crime sort of over that way. It's also close to the parents. So that'd be pretty ideal for me there. Okay,
so you're kind of ticking off the lifestyle aspect of that, and your parents owning your own home. What's a house in Armstrong Creek worth?
Off the top of my head, between 600,000 and 700,000 ish.
Okay, so let's say it's 700,000. Have you got a sense of what you'd need to put down as a deposit for a $700,000 property?
Well, if I was to just do it off my own back, it'd be 10%. So it would be from 70 up. But with first home buyers grant and everything like that, then that's where it can vary. Yep.
Okay. So let's ignore the first home buyers grant for the minute and just say, okay, well, I know that I need 10%. Mm-hmm. How long until you want to buy your home, did you say?
It's probably about at least 2 or 3 years away.
Okay. So let's use 3 years. So you need 70 grand in 3 years' time. there's the answer on how much we actually need to put aside. The question is, would you be able to get some funds from anywhere else? Like, is there support from parents? Is there an inheritance or something like that?
Yeah. I'd probably be able to get some help from my parents.
Great. Yeah. So then if you can quantify that and say, listen, mum and dad are happy to stump up 20 grand to help get me in my first home. All right, we know we need to save 50 grand. Depending on the time frame, that will then dictate how those funds are invested. So we didn't talk about it on the podcast today, but time frame kind of dictates many things. People will come and say, Jay, I want to buy a home in 3 years' time. I've got this money. I want to put it in the share market. And I'll say, I don't think that's a good idea. Like, the shorter the time frame, the more conservative you need to be. The longer the time frame, the more aggressive you can justify being. But in that conversation, you got a pretty good idea. Divide 50 grand by 3 years, and you got a sense of what, even with no growth, what you need to put aside. Then you come back to your budget. You look at how much I earn, what my current expenses are, and I plug in savings of 50 grand divided by 36 months. That's how much a month I need to put aside as a rule of thumb. Now we're starting to build a bit of a plan around cash flow and budgeting to get you towards that goal. Obviously, there's a bunch of other variables, first home buyers, whatever. Maybe that time frame's more, maybe that time frame's less, maybe property prices go up or down, but you've got a plan. You've got a plan based around cash flow that's logical and makes sense. And even to the extent that you could, and you've probably done it, like, have you ever gone and done a mortgage calculator and go, how much, if I could put $70,000 into a $700,000 property, so let's say ignore stamp duty, but I've got to borrow $630,000. Do you know what the repayments on $630,000 would be?
I haven't looked that far, yeah.
Yeah. So I wouldn't be waiting 3 years to work out what the estimate of those repayments would be. I'd be saying, well, I can kind of guess what they'll be now. Mm-hmm. And guess what? That helps you understand. That helps you understand what your income needs to be in 3 years' time to be able to support a borrowing of $630,000. So all of that comes back to having a really good handle on your cash flow and budgeting. Again, does the 50-30-20 rule help with that? Not really. Like, it's your situation. It's specifically what Bridee wants. What Bridee wants will dictate how much Bridee should be putting into savings or investments based upon her own personal financial and lifestyle goals. So I would start all those conversations as early as you possibly can. And I'm a nerd. I like to, I like to think about those things early. So as early as you possibly can. Again, everything should be done yesterday.
So coming to the end of the podcast now, what would you leave our listeners with? What would be your final closing statement to sort of get everyone into a bit of a head start into cash flow and budgeting?
Well, this is probably going out to not only the kids, but the parents of kids, because, there's not many 13-year-olds listening to this, but the answer is to start early. Like, start early. Don't overcomplicate it. And I think the disappointing thing is that they don't teach this at schools. Like, it's taken Bridee and Daniel at Burke Britain to do a podcast to educate kids on cash flow management and budgeting so that we can set them up for a successful future. It's kind of almost criminal that they don't teach this stuff at school, that they don't actually give kids the principles of budgeting and cash flow management early, because it's a life skill. Like, it's absolutely a life skill that if you get right, like I can't stress this enough, that if you get cash flow management right and combine that with incremental investing, you are unstoppable. Don't worry about people complaining about the cost of living and inability to buy a home in the future. If you start early with your kids, you start early with them saving and investing and having an awareness around their cash flow, and combine that with small amounts of regular investment, they will be unstoppable. And that's probably my closing point to the parents and to the kids of parents and to people of your age. How old are you both?
20.
23. Yeah. So it's to take ownership yourself. Don't wait for someone else to tell you what you should be doing. Take ownership yourself. The only person that's going to be able to sort of make tangible difference to your situation is you. So if that means reach out to us, ask us for a budget spreadsheet so you can start, do that. If it means making use of some of those apps that are available in your banking app, then by all means do that. And most importantly, listen to episode 2, 3, 4, and 5 of the Young Minds podcast, because Daniel and Bridee have got lots and lots of great questions, great tips, and I'm sure this is just the start of what will be a great podcast series. So thanks again for having me on, guys.
Thank you so much.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you're keen to understand more about how financial advice could benefit you, follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at Burke Britain FP, or Google Burke Britain Financial Partners. Check out our client reviews, testimonials, and make a time to meet one of our certified financial planners by clicking Book Now on our website. Thanks for listening.
Any information contained in this podcast is of a general nature only. No account was taken as to the objectives, financial situation, or needs of any particular person. Therefore, before making any decision, listeners should consider the appropriateness of any information with regard to their particular objective, financial situation, needs, and seek independent advice from a licensed professional specific to their circumstances.
All right, hit it.
That translates to don't be a moron and act on what some random person says on a podcast. Take personal responsibility, do your homework, ask questions, and speak to an actual human that knows what they're talking about before you do anything. PP Financial Solutions Proprietary Limited, trading as Burke Britain Financial Partners, are authorised representatives of AMP Financial Planning Limited, AFS, licence number 232706.